Today, Senate Democrats are trying to dust off a 1920s-era law they say has the legal standing to force the Trump administration to release the Giuffre Epstein files. It's known as the Rule of Five. It essentially states a minority party in Congress can make a demand like this as long as five lawmakers on a certain committee sign on. You guessed it. A source tells CNN the Justice Department does not, though, plan to comply. Overnight, the DOJ did file a memo that further laid out its case to get some grand jury testimony unsealed in New York. Justice officials cited intense public interest as part of their reasoning. Meantime, in the House, some lawmakers on the Oversight Committee are strongly opposing the idea of a pardon or clemency for Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted sex trafficker who wants immunity and other conditions, a number of them, before agreeing to testify before the committee. With us now is Spencer Kuvin. He's an attorney who has represented several of Epstein's victims over the years. He is now the chief legal officer of Gold Law. Spencer, let's first talk about the Ghislaine Maxwell issue, right? And these conditions that she's asking Congress to abide by in order to testify in front of them. She is a convicted child sex trafficker. You've represented a number of victims. Paint the picture for us of what she has done. What kind of person is requesting, in this case, clemency to speak?
Thank you for having me on. She's an evil person. At its core, there is nothing other than just evil in this woman. She is the one that was actively out recruiting young girls to bring them to Epstein. And I've said this before, but without Ghislaine Maxwell, there would have been no Giuffre Epstein. You have an elderly or older gentleman, white-haired. He's not going to convince young 14 and 15-year-old girls to come to his home for doing what he did. But if you have an educated, well-dressed, English accented woman approaching these young girls and promising them that they could be models and they're beautiful, their guard is down. So, she is more guilty, if not just as certainly guilty as Epstein. So the idea of giving her any kind of immunity at all is just repugnant to the victims.
There are people demanding this information, the files, testimony from Maxwell. They want to know about the third parties and what they did to these girls as well. Does Maxwell have that information in a way that could answer some of those questions and in a way that the documents would not?
Without a doubt, she has that information. Look, during the original proceeding that I handled on behalf of the victims dating back to 2007, we got, during the discovery process, phone logs, message pads that were seized by police during that investigation. It showed numerous people calling the homes, trying to make appointments for massages and to have them send over girls. We know that Ghislaine Maxwell was in charge of organizing all of that. She's the one that ran the house here in Palm Beach. We believe that she also ran his home up in Manhattan, and she was organizing all the ins and outs of these relationships. And then she would trade off those relationships and get Giuffre invited to different parties and events based upon the compromising material that they already had developed on these individuals.
So if she has that information, can she be trusted to be fulsome in testifying about it?
I mean, that's the $6 million question, right? She is a convicted liar. We know that she lies for her own benefit. But the question really becomes, what hard evidence does she have that can prove what she's saying is true? I would note that she came to her interview with the Department of Justice with a box. What's in the box? We want to know what she kept, because undoubtedly she was concerned for her own safety and life in jail after Mr. Epstein died in jail. So she probably kept compromising material that she could trade off of and say, look, if I'm killed or I die, this stuff is going to get released.
So you're someone who deposed Epstein, and I will say briefly, it's a really interesting story about how you deposed him about something that upset him so badly that he cut off, or his attorneys cut off the deposition, and then you turned around and were able to file that transcript and that video such that it became public. It was incredibly embarrassing for him. But you asked some questions that really got under his skin. I wonder if you were asking questions of Maxwell, what would you ask?
Well, that is a good question. The intent in going into the deposition of Epstein was to completely slay him, to make sure that we destroyed him enough that he got so upset that he would do what he did, and then we could publish the video of that embarrassing question to him, because we knew back then that he would have hated it. I would love to be able to have the opportunity to sit down with Ms. Maxwell and the evidence that we've developed over the years and do the same ideas, have the same questions about what she was doing and base it on the information we already have, and then get that information verified to make sure that what she's saying is true. I don't want to give away, any potential questions, but realistically speaking, we'd want to know her travel, her whereabouts, where she was, when she was there, and then match that up with the girls that we know were abused.
When you look at the things that Congress is subpoenaing and you hear a lot of the rhetoric about what people are arguing should be released, do you think that they're barking up the right trees? And if not, what trees should they be barking up?
No, I think they absolutely are. Look, President Trump has said that he stands on the rights of victims. He stands up for victims, especially child victims. This is his opportunity to stand behind those words. Trump could sign an executive order today demanding that the DOJ release all material that they have in the Epstein litigation, keeping out, obviously, and blacking out the names of minor victims, but otherwise release the documents, sign the executive order today, because either he is admitting that he doesn't want to do that, or that he doesn't have the power to do that. And I don't think that he's going to ever admit he doesn't have the power to sign an executive order demanding the release of this information. And most importantly, the victims want the videos released to show who was at the home when they were there and what was occurring while they were there. Because we know that there were very high-profile individuals that were in and out of the Palm Beach home, the Manhattan home, as well as the Virgin Island home. And the FBI has thousands of hours of videotape from them.
Spencer, I just want to play something the president said yesterday about how Epstein poached girls from the spa at Mar-a-Lago to work for him. Here's what he said.
He took people that worked for me, and I told him don't do it anymore, and he did it. And I said, stay the hell out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Giuffre?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
She did work at the spa at Mar-a-Lago as a spa attendant, and it was Maxwell who recruited her from that spa. When you hear the president say that, Spencer, what questions does that bring up for you?
Well, I can tell you one thing. First of all, in cross-examining people for 30 years, okay, I can tell you that he didn't want to answer that question. Notice that when he's first asked about it, he says, I don't know. And then he realizes his brain starts working and thinking through it, thinking they're going to be able to figure this out, and I don't want to look stupid, so I better tell them. And then he amends his answer later. That happens when someone's trying to hide the truth. That happens when I cross-examine people. And you just have to keep pushing like that reporter did. We know that Virginia worked at the spa, and she was one of the ones that Epstein used in his sex trafficking scheme, that he traded her to various different high-profile individuals around the world. That has never been publicly admitted before. And she had to fight during her litigation because they were claiming that she was lying about all of that. We now know from the words of the president himself that Virginia was right all along, and that she was trafficked out of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, the late Virginia Giuffre, who died by suicide, we should mention, as a number of victims of Jeffrey Epstein have. Spencer Kuvin, thank you so much for speaking with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, as usual.